brain recognizes the difference between medicinal and recreational cannabis. The difference has always been arbitrary. For example, after legalizing recreational cannabis, California initially required each cultivated seedling to be designated by growers as either a medicinal or recreational cannabis plant. From that point onward, each plant and its products maintained the designation all the way through retail sale. The process existed despite the fact that growers were free to designate any given seedling however they wished, depending on whatever they predicted the market would most need. Eventually, California relented to the fact that cannabis is cannabis. The same product sold for recreational users is sold to medicinal users. Today, the designation of whether a cannabis product is sold for one or the other purpose is made at the point of sale, with some taxes foregone when a customer qualifies as a medicinal user. The fact that the same strains of cannabis are sold for both recreational and medicinal purposes has raised the question of whether medicinal users meet the criteria for cannabis use disorder at the same time or at a different rate than the recreational users. So I need to point out that the medical criteria, the DSM-5 criteria for cannabis use disorder, are a series of vague, nonsensical, or conflicting statements that conflate healthy use with problematic behavior. So a meta-analysis study by Ling et al. Showed that among people who use recreational cannabis, 22% satisfy criteria for cannabis use disorder. In another meta-analysis, Dawson et al. Combined data from 14 studies with 3,681 participants from 5 different countries and found that 25% of medical cannabis users satisfy criteria for cannabis use disorder. Dawson concluded that the prevalence of cannabis use disorder is comparable in both recreational and medicinal users. So the diagnostic criteria for cannabis use disorder is a poor measure of problematic cannabis use. Tolerance and dependence are normal consequences of cannabis use and other legal substances. They are only problematic when the outcome is problematic. What I'm trying to say is that the author of this article is an idiot. He writes about cannabis without knowing much about it. But I chose this article because I agree that there's not much difference between recreational and medicinal use. Cannabis is not a vice. It doesn't cause damage like cigarettes or alcohol consumption. Regular cannabis use has recently been reported as improving quality of health in several studies. They say that daily walks are healthy. I walk every day. Does that make me a recreational walker or a medical walker? I propose we stop distinguishing between recreational and medical cannabis use. How about we agree that we are all using cannabis in health and wellness? This is Dr. Sean Talleyrand with Time News.
It's all medicine, and this is the wellness industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe it's all medical, no matter what use you're using it for. Even if you don't understand the medical benefits, you are still receiving them. That's always been my opinion on this.
Yeah, well, now that we know that there's a series of receptors in our bodies that these compounds act on, all use is medicinal. And the other thing is that, fortifying the fatty tissues with things that are anti-inflammatory and antioxidant will help fight cancer and free radical formation that can lead to cancer and DNA damage. So, yeah, who is it? I think Ethan would say, even though we don't understand it, in spite of us not understanding it, all cannabis use is medical, whether we understand it or not, because of the impact that it's having on our bodies. Kind of like similar to the way vitamins work, right, Dr. Talleyrand? I mean, when you say that because there's an endogenous set of receptors that exist in our body, that these things are almost like vitamins in that these things are hard, our bodies are hardwired to accept these molecules and to use them in productive ways.
If I could take that a step further, I think a lot of the common conditions that people suffer from is cannabis deficiency disorder in a way. You know, you're not getting your endogenous system is not producing, or they're not combining properly with your receptors. And when I look to, you know, a lot of these common conditions, or even when people say, well, it must be addictive because I feel crappy when I stop consuming cannabis, or I would correlate that with scurvy. We don't say you're addicted to vitamin C when you experience scurvy from a lack of vitamin C. We give you an orange. So there's, I think we can look at this from both sides of that pendulum as well.
I agree with that very, very much so, Dale, because there was a propagandist piece in the Hill this morning that Kevin Sabet was behind, and they were given. I thoroughly enjoyed it because they were getting on Vice President Kamala Harris and her little little circus show that she did the other day in regards with Fat Joe and whatnot. And so
you're supporting Kevin Sabet.
Hold on, you didn't allow me to finish. Okay, because I do agree with Kevin Sabet in a lot of the points that he made as far as them grandstanding on this issue and not doing anything about it. But he conflated a lot of things, saying that cannabis was addictive and all of these other different things. And I was like, I don't buy that cannabis is addictive for a second. I'm not buying any of that BS or any of that type of rhetoric. That to me is just crazy talk.
Well, if you're addicted to feeling good and cannabis makes you feel good, I'm addicted to feeling good. So is there a real difference? I'm not addicted to cannabis, and I don't need cannabis necessarily to feel good, but cannabis certainly does it for me and gets me there. So if I'm addicted to feeling good, so be it, right?
I like what you did there. That's a good spin, Dr. Mark. But when we're talking about in the medical field, aren't addictive properties, don't they trigger something certain that happens in the brain that cannabis doesn't do?
It does. Yeah. So Dr. Talleyrand and I talked about this a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the dopamine and dopaminergic reward system. That is something that like things like cocaine acts on, and just feeling good, feeling natural bliss. But I guess, again, just going back to, I think something else that Dr. Talleyrand had mentioned, which is that what is the definition of accepted medical use, right? So when we talk about Schedule I listing of drug having no known use, they slip that, well, it has to be medically accepted, right? So that means, and Dr. Talleyrand illustrated this, it means that it's been taken through clinical trials and tested to prove efficacy and safety in humans. Now, it's true that both CBD and THC are the active ingredients of approved FDA-approved drugs. So to me, again, they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth, and this is what unwinds the whole Schedule I listing, because accepted medical use, right, Dr. Talleyrand, means that a doctor who is used to prescribing FDA-approved medications can feel good about prescribing cannabis. Isn't that right?
Well, I mean,
You're muted. No, you're good.
Recommending and not. I'm good. Okay. Yeah, we say recommended and not prescribed because the FDA owns the word medicine. They have the power over us advertising medicine. So, THC is medicine, CBD is medicine, a 1-to-1 THC to CBD is medicine, although not approved here. But cannabis is not medicine, according to the FDA, which is why I'm saying let's pivot. We need to look back at how we're doing this, and we need to, number one, admit that there is that, recreational is medicine. The only reason people wanted recreational is they didn't want to go to the doctor to prove that they could use cannabis, which is fine with me. Let them buy it over the counter, but let's not change the reason why they're using it. It's for health and wellness. And recreation is a therapeutic act.
Yes.
So recreation is medicinal anyway. But I think we need to look at ourselves and how we present this to the rest of the community, to the rest of the non-cannabis users.
Well, I like the comment that Nick Bradley threw up there, and I think this kind of explains more kind of how I view it, how I view it at least. It says basically if it doesn't create a chemical dependency, and to me that's where I kind of like draw the line as far as a threshold on whether or not something is addictive or not.
Well, let me set the record straight for Nick and you. It does create a chemical dependency. It's okay. It doesn't hurt you. That's really the end result is, does it hurt you? It does create a chemical dependency. There is tolerance with cannabis. You are hitting your dopamine reward system with THC. You're counteracting your dopamine reward system with CBD. But so what, right? That doesn't mean it's bad. You know, there's no bad outcome from doing that. The dopamine reward system is there for a reason. And it's there to get you to do things that are beneficial.
Does chocolate also hit that same? Doesn't like, yeah. I mean, it's.
I don't know. Probably.
Well,
Sugar is my point. You know, it's a drug.
Yes.
sugar,
Yes.
Caffeine. Dr. T would hit that
sugar
also,
way
that
more.
marker.
Sugar
was my
has
only-
claimed. Yeah, sugar has claimed millions more lives than cannabis.
That part.
Yeah, exactly.
That part.
Exactly.
And
Cannabis is not bad. That's the real world evidence.
And on
I
that,
really appreciated, real quick, I appreciate how you said that recreation it's good for your health. I need to take that. I need to take that medicine a little bit more often for how much I work. What's hard for me, and my ears were exploding, is as an industry, when we call it recreational, we make it sound fun for kids. And so there's also just a messaging
Yeah,
issue with
I agree
recreational
with that.
versus adult use and responsible use. So I just had to slide that in there as Amsterdam University.
and Dale, I just want to.
Is using
Child
adults good
guide.
for your health? Is
What's
using
that?
adults good for your health?
Using adults, I'd be careful with that, but just responsible use, adult use. But I really like the way that you're approaching that, and I'm going to adopt some of that verbiage. Thank you, doctor.
I love that. You know, Dr. T just gave you a red pill. And on that, we're going to go to a
The red
commercial,
pill.
and we're going to be right back.